council members acknowledge and pay respect to the traditional custodians of the land and the waters on which we meet, the Ngarrindjeri people we meet here today. We acknowledge the deep feelings of attachment and relationship of Aboriginal people to country and pay our respects to elders past and present. We also extend that respect to all First Nation people. Thank you, everyone. Move the agenda to the first, which is apologies. I have none, but Councillor Peach will be a late arrival. The next item is acknowledgements. At this stage, I have none. Item 3 is declarations of conflict of interest. Do any members have any conflict of interest to declare? Taking that there is none. Item 4. Confirmation of the minutes of the ordinary meeting held, including the confidentials, held on the 20th of December 2022. Someone move that way, please. Councillor Bland. There's a second to Councillor Qualman. Any discussion needed? There being none, I ask you to vote. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Number 5 is adjourned business. I have none. Number 6, reports by members. The Mayor's report is in the agenda. You may note that the Mayor of the Coroonda East Murray Council, Councillor Phillips, and myself visited the Riverland on the 14th of December as much as a courtesy visit. The first meeting of the Murraylands Riverlands LGA was deferred until only last Friday because of the floods. It was as much for us to give some support to the new mayors, but also to see quite graphically how large the flood is in the Riverland then, but as we can see down as far effectively as Swamppool Bridge now. Any other questions? Move on to council members' reports. Councillor Qualman, you want to add anything to your extensively long report?
No, thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Very good. And no other councillors have reported in this time. Petitions, number 7, I have nil. Deputations, number 8, I have none. So I move to question time in number 9, and I do have some questions. Terry Connolly, come forward to that speaker, please, and pull it down so we can hear you. And Terry's put us 3 questions. You can just read out your first one, Terry, please.
Just put a bit of context around it, Mayor.
Just a little bit, yes.
Yeah, well, it's just a bit. Okay, well, the reason for the 3 questions is that I wrote to the 7 area councils on Wednesday, the 21st of December 2022, and I only received 2 responses, one from Councillor Qualman on January 1 and the other from Councillor Arthur on January 10. So my question is, do the area councils operate under the council policy, complaints and compliments policy and timeframes for response? And leadership 3.8, council members actively communicate and consult with the community.
So Ashley, that is the correct policies they would operate under in this scenario?
We do have a complaints and compliments policy. That's it covers the whole of the organisation, but it covers the stuff like in dealing with documents that get sent into council. So if it came to the council at Coorong email address, it would have been dealt with in line with that policy. It's difficult to respond if it's been sent directly to a councillor in that manner. There is probably also, in terms of what governs councillor behaviour, the behavioural standards, which is slightly different to the complaints and compliments policy.
You've got that look, Terry?
Yeah, I got all that, but the question was, do they operate under that? So I'm guessing
yes,
from that answer, they sort of do.
Given
what would you think the expectation would be then?
Well, I would hope councillors would respond.
I have a
And I
question
suppose-
on that. Can I just ask for that date again? Because I would normally respond and I have no memory of it. So I'm just going to ask for the date again so I can. do
When,
research.
Terry, when did you send?
Sent it on Wednesday, the 21st of December, 2022.
I was in Hong Kong.
Wednesday, the 20th,
First,
December.
or
So-
December's a busy month.
So what I suppose the point I'd make is that obviously we need to try and abide by the policy and communicate, and we'll be doing a lot more training in the near future around all these processes as is the requirement in the new act. Or the revised act, as we call it now.
Oh, that-
I might call it.
that's fine.
Okay, we'll go to your second question.
Okay, so just a little bit of context around that too. So I wrote to the council on 22/11/2020 to voice my concerns about the aesthetic quality of many areas of the town, particularly the rail yards, Railway Terrace, Webb Street, etc. And it's still exactly the same. So I can quote some council vision, mission and values here about what council stands for in relation to community wellbeing and sense of community and pride of community. But the question is, has the council contacted the rail network owners regarding their responsibility to weed control in their yards in our town? If so, what was their response? If not, why not?
CEO.
Through you, Mayor. We have ongoing conversations with either state or private organisations on land which is in the public arena, but not under our care and control. So it's a bit like DIT and the roads. We have a regular meeting with them. I think that after that email we got, I think I had a conversation with you because you were part of the hub and that at that particular point in time. But we are constantly reminding private organisations.
I might answer.
So can I just add to that? The
Yep.
question was, have you contacted the railway network owners? Not, you've
We're probably referring to
generalised.
two separate network owners
You
now.
generalised there, so
Yeah.
that was my question.
ARTC and I think Horizon is now the other owner.
That's correct. And ARTC.
Horizon is probably the owner of most of the
It-
non-mainline asset in this town.
Well, ARTC own the main line and the crossing loop. All the rest is Horizon.
Horizon.
So has anyone contacted them? Because I have. And no one's contacted them.
But through you, Mayor, I can't off the top of my head tell you the answer to that question, Mr. Connolly. So we will have a look, and if we haven't, we will make sure that we write to them. But I know that verbally we've had a conversation with ARTC about several issues, not so much Horizon, they've just come into the picture.
And I might add, does the council have a beautification and maintenance plan for the town? So what is the plan? Well, the town, what we call the new town centres project, so I'm looking for the right words at the moment, is out for public consultation very soon, which will focus very much on the town centre here between what is Granites Road now and South Terrace in terms of, and you know, obviously the rail infrastructure or the railway station forms the centrepiece of that. So we'd urge everyone to talk about that. Also, some directors and myself had a meeting with ARTC in probably December. We're out of caretaker by then, I think, around pedestrian crossings at Intinara, which I'd be fair to say was a fairly, I could have used my time more usefully. So we'll go on trying to negotiate and get a relationship with either ARTC or Horizon around their plans, if anything. But do we have a beautiful, well, we obviously have a maintenance plan for the town. How that relates to sometimes other people's land is problematic.
Well,
For you, Mr. Mayor, if I can,
Yeah, you can ask a
I
question.
actually had it on my books to bring that up today because I went for a drive around there. And I did see what you put in 20, was it? 21?
21.
Last one.
20.
I did see that, but it is very untidy. I think.
it's a disgrace,
Doesn't
not
it?
untidy. Anyway, so like I know people in ARTC, 45 years. There are other councils that have ARTC going through their land. They meet with them and they get an agreement of what should be done. If we're not talking to them, I can guarantee you, they don't wake up in Adelaide, Myland and Islington and think, wonder how things are going at Tailem Bend. They don't care. Meet with them and I'm sure you'll be able to work something out.
Okay, And your third question,
Oh, yeah, this is a bit dear to me, and this is like, I can see this is a big thing, but but this is another thing, the council's core values read in part, a sustainable region that recognises the importance of the history of the region. So as my question is, does the council have a plan to recognise the importance of the railway history in Tailem Bend? And if so, what is the plan? Bit like Peterborough, I guess.
question I'm looking at the CEO in a direct sense around the history of railways.
So there is no specific plan, if that's what you're looking for, Mr Connolly, around the recognition of the railway and its historical significance in the town.
So yes, but it would be fair to say that what's the streetscape plan does very much centre on this railway station in Tailem Bend.
Yeah.
I'd say that. And I think the other thing I'd make comment on at this point is we're not very far, and I keep looking at the officers around finalising the ongoing leases of railway stations or railway land in Canalpin, Tintinara and Tailem Bend. As we should have something within a couple of months. That's always the more interesting part of this, is to try and get them to actually lease it. So it's our responsibility. We look after it and it's not quite ours.
Oh, I just think there's an opportunity for a tourist attraction in this town with its railway heritage. If you look at Peterborough.
And so, Jerry, I urge you to read the streetscape plan, because the one at Tailem Bend, looking at Councillor Qualman, he missed that meeting, unfortunately, very much focuses around making that the centre of this town in its plan. I don't know if we asked all your questions. We answered all your questions to somewhat.
Well, yes, you did, but thank you for your time.
No, anytime.
I will
Welcome any public to the meeting.
watch with interest to see what takes place.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
So if you could maybe let me know when you're meeting with ARTC, that'd be.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I have no other public questions. Ashley, no. Item 10, decision reports. Coorong District Local Action Plan Committee Terms of Reference Review. I'm taking Councillor Arthur has moved the recommendation as it's read. Is that right? Councillor Roundtree, you
Like to move an amendment?
can't yet because it hasn't got a seconder.
Okay.
Councillor Bland, are you the seconder?
Yes, I'll second it. Move on.
Councillor Arthur, you're going to speak to the recommendation and your motion?
I think it's just made it a little bit more concise. It was spread out before. And I think probably the lap that's now changed a little bit from what it was 4 or 5 years ago. And the terms of reference of that go along with the way it's changed. So that's all I've got to say.
Seconder wish to speak?
No, I'm waiting to hear the amendment. Thank you.
Councillor Peach, we're on item 10 and I have a motion, which is the recommendation. I'm at a councillor, dare I say, foreshadow an amendment. Councillor Roundtree, do you wish to move an amendment?
Well, what I was going to suggest, yes, the amendment would be that that the amendments lay on the table until a workshop has been completed. Section 41 committees, but I've also been made aware that there's a bit of a timeline around the Section 41, around the LAP committee terms of reference being accepted, in which case I'd like something in the wording that says that the terms of reference for the LAP, acknowledging that the terms of reference for the LAP may change once we've had a workshop on the issue, because I think there are some issues with all of the Section 41 committees.
The mover and seconder, would you be happy to add, and I think it'll be an add, just acknowledging that,
Yes, well, I'm not the mover, so. I'm happy to-
acknowledging that.
Yeah, I got no problem. It's a living document.
So your words will be,
Well, acknowledging that the terms of reference may change after
the Section 41.
the Section
committees.
41 workshop that
Workshop.
we need to have very shortly.
So is that the words? Look at the mover. Happy with that?
You would.
Yes. Mover happy with what's now the varied motion? The varied motion. Seconder happy? We go on with debate. Anyone want it? Councillor Peach?
Yeah, true. I'd just like it noted that all the minutes do reflect that no feedback was received, there was feedback received.
Yeah.
And I would also like to note that the review in accordance with clause 2.2, I believe, is materially incorrect. Clause 2.2 in our section, term of reference, refers to the council reviewing the committees in general. It doesn't specifically refer to the terms of reference, and that there is a clause in our terms of reference that does refer to that. And I'd just like it on note that while I don't disagree that we have the power to amend these at will under the Act, that I don't think it has proceeded in a correct manner.
Okay,
And I do support the amendment because I think it doesn't.
well, it's not an amendment, it's a variation.
I do support
So
variations.
remains the motion, this has been varied. So you've spoke to it. Anyone else wish to speak for or against?
You may, is
Yep.
it going to be noted in the minutes then that feedback was received on this? Because the feedback I sent also related to all of the section 41s in general, with some specific parts relating to certain section 41s.
I think the minute can just reflect that, can just the minute book will just say that there was some responses to that. I take it that because this is subject to acknowledging any changes in the near future, that'll help that process of you already putting in some
Yes.
submissions around this. I also appreciate that people understand that we probably do need to get this committee working.
Very.
Anyone else wish to speak?
So we're varying the minute to be able to reflect that now.
The minute, we're varying the motion. The motion's been varied. The minute just needs to note some couple of councillors responded. Because in the report it says that we didn't, for whatever reason, that they did respond. So let's just note that. Anyone else? Councillor Arthur?
Close.
I put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Number 2, Coorong Infrastructure and Assets Committee, terms of reference review. Someone move that way, please, or move something,
Question.
certainly.
And maybe it's just that in the name change to Road and Infrastructure Committee. Just not sure I'm happy that clarity is around everything else we do but roads, because infrastructure takes over 75% of what we pretty much do. So are we and is that we are looking at all infrastructure, or are we not looking at all infrastructure? I just don't get the clarity in there. I was reading this.
Do you mean?
I'm having trouble with your drift, councillor, but I'll let the CEO have a go.
Remember when we went to market for a new director, we purposely put in the word roads because that's our biggest infrastructure spend.
Oh.
It doesn't exclude any other infrastructure, so and it can be, it could just be the infrastructure committee, if that would be more suitable.
Yeah, I guess I thought we had assets before in it. Clarity around infrastructure really was what I was on about, not so much the road.
I contend, councillor, that an enormous amount of our budget goes into roads.
Yes, but community lives with infrastructure too.
Yeah, and the word infrastructure is last 20 years has been a word that's come into vogue.
Which is why I think it's grey. Not everybody understands.
Maybe.
However, I
I'm
just
going
want
to
to make
take,
my point.
I'm still looking for a mover, but I'm going to go to councillor Roundtree.
I'm happy to move it, but I want the same disclaimer almost in this one as was in the previous one, that the terms of reference for this committee may also change once we've had the workshop.
So the same words. Can we
Same
add-
words, and I'm
just the
happy to
same
move
words
it,
as
and I
dot
also
item
have 2
4,
questions.
please. You wish to speak to that now?
I just have a couple of questions, more so than I need to
How
speak
about
to
we
it.
just get a seconder if you've got any other
Okay.
questions? Councillor Qualman is.
Thank you,
hand up
Mr.
Next.
Thank
Do
you,
wanna- You wish
Mr.
to second it or not?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Right. Do you want us to speak to it now or not?
Yeah, if I may, please.
Yes, yes. you
Um,
may.
I agree with councillor Bland. I'm a bit mystified by the title change, and I think infrastructure and assets is more encompassing. than this Roads and Infrastructure Committee. So anyway, I just thought I'd make that comment.
Fair
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Roundtree's got two questions, she said.
So what wasn't clear for me is when the chairperson, it talks about all of us are members of this committee, which I think is a good idea. But when is the chairperson chosen?
Would have thought the first meeting of the committee.
So it's at the first meeting, and how is that done? Just through a poll?
Through the mayor, it would be the normal election process that we would use for any other nomination.
That's a poll. And just clarifying that this person gets $120 sitting fee, because that's
Not if it's mayor.
Not my reading
not
of
if
it,
it's the
councillor.
mayor or the deputy mayor, but if it was anyone else,
Someone else, it's a standing
They would.
committee of council.
right, okay.
And the previous term, councillor, I was the chair of the finance committee as well. Councillor Arthur,
Yeah,
who
it
happens to be deputy mayor, was the chair of
Yeah.
the roads and infrastructure. So there was no additional requirement for fees to be paid under that scenario. That's not saying that one of the other councillors doesn't want to be chair of one of the committees.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else speaking for or against this? It's recommendation as is with the item 4. Sorry, Ashley, how are we going? Same brighter as the last one.
Just quickly,
Councillor Arthur,
just quickly, Mr. Mayor, I think probably the name is better than it was before. Yeah. Is one of the key components we have got is roads, and the infrastructure are your assets. So even though a road is classified as an asset, I think most people would agree it's a liability. But yeah, so I think that just rounds it off a little bit. Because infrastructure and assets are virtually the same thing.
I won't get into the discussion around everything's an asset. Anyone else wish to speak to the motion? Your councillor Roundtree, you are speaking as a closer then, I think, because you're the
Okay, well, I
mover.
can. I just at the first line where it says having undertaken a review of the Coorong Infrastructure and Assets Committee terms of reference, and then we say acknowledging the terms of reference. Does that make sense? Is that not? Is it just my head that's not making sense?
It doesn't make sense.
You could just say,
Rather than a dot 4 would be that piece in blue. It's just a rider.
so you say one thing and then we say the next thing underneath. As long as it's not confusing.
Everyone clear? That's the recommendation in the agenda plus point 4. Okay, everyone, councillor Roundtree, you'll close.
Closed.
Okay, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? It's carried unanimously. Number 3, appointment of delegate to the Box Flat Wild Dog Coordinating Committee. Councillor Qualman.
I'd like to, on the recommendation, nominate Councillor Arthur. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're moving that the councillor appoint Councillor Arthur to the Box Flat Wild Dog Coordinating Committee.
Yes, thank you.
Your second to Councillor Roundtree, or
Yep. We'll go in a second.
you'll be quick, Mick. Anyone wish to speak to that? Everyone understands what it is? It's about wild dogs coming from the east into our district. And there's a committee that manages it. And about last September, we had an incursion of wild dogs, and a dogger was, I think, taken on and dealt with them promptly.
Yes,
Councillor
it's
Arthur, is that your report?
It's probably one of the few departments where you've got government departments, councils and landowners and 2 jurisdictions of Victoria and South Australia working together.
Working together.
And We only have 2 meetings a year, but they're very, very good. And the new chair of here is Heather, and she is the head of the wild dog department for South Australia, so very knowledgeable. And, you know, the thing is, we've had a few dog attacks and I've got trackers in and fixed them up pretty quickly.
Fixed them up pretty quick.
Doesn't take long to do a few $1,000s worth of damage if the dog gets into some lambs nowadays.
There you go.
And I've been on it for 12 years. So
Old dog.
I'm not quite sure it was old or wild, but anyway, it is what it is, councillor. Okay. Councillor Qualman, you're closing.
Yes, I'll close.
Thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? As against, it's unanimously carried. Number 4, Murray-Darling Basin Association Region 6, nomination of a council representative. There's
Question.
2 options there, councillors. I'll start with your question, councillor
My
Bland.
question is, can we just stop and discuss this? I'm not sure if everybody who's here actually understands Murray-Darling Association Region 6. I know the CEO would be more than capable of giving us the information.
So, yeah, I'm happy for the CEO to give an outline of how this works.
Through you, Mayor. So councillors, remember that you nominated 2 councillors, I think it was last meeting or the meeting before, which is councillor Coleman and councillor Peach. And that's for the ordinary meeting. It's quite a complicated governance structure, the MDA. And then there's an executive committee as well. So this motion is to ask for your nomination, if you want to do so, which really can only be, I think, from councillor Peach or from councillor Qualman, to nominate for chair, because the outgoing chair didn't stand for council last time. That's councillor Rebick, and she was from the Alexandrina Council. She will be departing at the AGM, which is in February. And so either councillor Qualman or councillor Peach can now nominate for the chair if they so desire. Executive committee is a slightly different part of the organisation. And if you don't want to nominate either of you for this position, it really just then leaves me as the representative, which is what it's been for the last 3 years, with Tracy Strugnell as the proxy.
So my follow-up question on that is in relation to Tracy Strugnell, in terms of being proxy, or are we able to still do that?
Yes, I worked that out last year because there were some meetings with the MDA that clashed with another, I think with the MLLGA, which I couldn't get to both. So there was no impediment for her being a proxy for the executive committee. And in reality, through you, Mayor, she does most of the legwork.
I'm looking at the 2 delegates we've already appointed to that committee, councillor Qualman and councillor Peach, whether either of them wish to be nominated by us to the position of regional chair for Region 6. So,
Mr. Mayor, no, I don't wish to stand for that. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I'm of the same view. Having not had experience on the committee yet, I think it'd be a bit cheeky to stand for chair.
necessarily cheeky. So, councillors, I'm going to take it. We're going to go to option 2. If neither of our delegates wish to nominate for the regional chair. Is someone prepared to move number 2, option 2? Councillors, I'll go with Bland and Roundtree on this one, please.
Just before we do that, do we need to consider whether Tracy Strugnell should be included in that, or her positioning to that? It will be automatic.
Through you, Mayor, it's really an administrative thing. It's not necessary.
Thank you. So moved.
Second, wish to speak either? Anyone else wish to speak? We're with option 2, which is the council nominate the Chief Executive Officer, Bridget Mather, to the Murray-Darling Association Region 6 Executive Committee. There's no more debate. I will put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Number 5, Premier's Climate Change Council, nomination of a representative.
Question?
Yes.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, am
No, you're getting my attention very quickly today, councillor.
I in the right spot? I really wanted to ask a question of whether this needs to be a councillor or an experienced staff member.
Through you, Mayor, it has to be a nomination of council, but it can be a council employee by councillor, elected member. And the next one is similar. So we get these through frequently from the LGA. And I suppose I thought it was important that we bring them to council now, because with the change in councillors, there may be a desire for one of you. It doesn't guarantee you a position on any of these bodies, but it allows you to nominate.
Mr. Mayor, I'll just test the water then. I'll move that we nominate Tracy Snuggle to the previous role.
Nominate one of our staff councillor.
As it says down the bottom here, you know,
Yeah.
staff, it can be staff.
So at this stage, she hasn't been approached, councillor, so it would be subject to her endorsement. I would
Yeah,
think.
I realise that, but it's the area she's very, very knowledgeable about. And has worked very well for the council over many years on that. So
You can test.
subject to her
Subject.
accepting the nomination.
I note that this goes forward to be selected by the LGA at the end of the day. There's not a-
Yeah, that's right.
So I'm looking at the CEO, it's her staff. You subject to her approval in the motion.
I would like to test it with the staff member before we put her name forward. And Tracy's on leave until the 6th of February. And I think the nominations for this close. I'm more than happy to give her a ring, but I know that she has just taken on a position on the landscape board. And I really don't know what her
Yeah, I know
answer
she's
would be.
good.
You want to go forward with your motion, councillor, is not seconded yet, or you want to withdraw it at this stage? Or defer it or withdraw it? Councillor, you want to withdraw?
Oh,
So you're withdrawing that.
I'll withdraw that nomination.
Councillor Roundtree,
I just had a question.
Yeah.
And that was around I wasn't quite sure, does the council pay to be a part of this group, or is that person paid to be a part of the group?
It's a sitting fee, as in most state government boards.
Okay.
So you met, which I think if you're a council employee, you forego. It's not paid.
the normal. The councillors, if we haven't got someone wish to nominate, and it wouldn't preclude us at the next meeting doing this, by the way, but I think option 2 might be better.
I'm happy to move that way.
So you're going to go with option 2. Could we just council receive and note the report?
I'll second that.
So councillor Arthur is the seconder. Can you just debate around that? There being none, I put the motion. All those in favour? Oh, what am I voting? Councillor Bland, you're not voting, or you're voting in the other way? You're voting against. You're voting against the motion. So that's carried with all councillors voting for the motion, except councillor Bland. She voted against it. Okay, I'll move on to number 6, South Australian Public Health Council, nomination of a representative for that.
I nominate councillor Bland, subject to her acceptance of the position.
We can ask her directly.
Of the recommendation, sorry.
Councillor Bland, you've been nominated. Are you prepared to have the same process of your name going forward for consideration?
Thank you anyway, but I won't at this stage. I do believe that they're probably more recent, and I'm wondering again, same issue around staffing. I know we share a health officer, but is that person actually involved? Do we know from Murray Bridge in this? As much as I'd like to say I do it, I have been down this track in a slightly different version not that many years ago. And while it doesn't take a lot of time in terms of meetings, it takes an awful lot, and I have taken on more.
Councillor Arthur, Councillor Bland has declined your offer. Councillor Roundtree?
Then I will move motion option 2, that we just receive a note.
I'll
Yes, you
second that.
can. People change their mind. We might have some time on that one as well. Councillor Roundtree, is there a seconder? Bland is seconding option 2. Any debate? There being none, I put the motion. All those in favour? As against, that's carried unanimously. Item 7, the former CFS shed at Meningie, sorry. What did I say? Yeah. Meningie, there's a report and there is a recommendation. Someone want to move? Councillor Bland has got a hand, you got a question?
More than one.
Cool.
Firstly, we've said the site retained as community open space. We were talking about some other infrastructure the other day that is requested by the RAA. It has the potential for that if we actually say that this be retained open space, and that limits that. So my question is whether or not we need to, or alternative, needs to be considered there. The other comment I'd like to make is around that CFS shed is dear to the hearts of many people in Meningie over many, many years, and would like to see plaque or something remain somewhere on that spot at some point. So my question is, do we want listed completely as retained as community open space, which we can see all sorts of lovely opportunities there, but we may also be limiting another opportunity around some RAA infrastructure. Potentially.
Through you, Mayor, I'll just get some advice from the director. My gut feeling is it doesn't, but I'll just want to check.
Through you, Mayor, I'm not sure that site will be appropriate for the RAA, and we're in discussions with them continually following our workshop the other day. Regarding open space, I think there's all sorts of options from an infrastructure point of view. I think that the building is what it is. I don't have anything else to offer.
So the question, councillor, you're asking is, by using the words community open space, are we limiting any future use? I don't think in the planning sense, it means it's a general comment about what use it would move to in the short term. I don't think that.
Open space was open space, and it's you do for some reason
Well,
else there, such as the RAA option. Then I want to make sure that it can be done.
Through you, Mayor, if it's declared as community land, then that would restrict our options. If it was retained as a council asset being land for whatever use we choose, I'm not sure that the declaration of it as a community land is triggered by the words in this recommendation, but it could be it's retained by council.
I think if we remove just retained by council, then we can check the clarity. So great, I'm just making sure we don't limit our options.
Are you, Councillor O'Hara? Yes, absolutely.
Is it possible if we were to move this and through, is it possible at a later date to change it?
Oh, I'm sure in relation to those last words, yes.
I sort of lean towards what Councillor Bland is saying, that maybe something else comes up, but I'm sure we can bring it back and change it.
So the point could be that the words might be a little bit tight for some, but if we wish to move it to another one of those options, at the moment, there's a building on it. This way, it's quite clear there won't be a building on it at some point. It actually opens up the options, not at this stage. Yes, Miles.
Just to clarify, this is Crown land under care and control of council. So to a large degree, it is to be retained by council under those purposes. So in fact, we can't sell it. I think the idea about the wording retain as open space is more about the question, what happens when the building comes down? It gives an indication to the community about the immediate use of the site. And as you say, Councillor O'Hara, at any stage, if something very bit comes up and there's a useful purpose that again fits that Crown under the care and control requirements, it can be looked at.
Yes, if I may, I just find that it would be double, sorry. So O'Hara, but I would find that is double-handed because it leaves the option straight open now for our director to infrastructure.
Roads and infrastructure.
To in fact be able to negotiate looking at that potential as well.
Mr. Mayor, would it be just possible think that has been moved to second, but I'm not up there.
No, it's not.
I haven't, okay.
You could do that if you wished.
Why not at this stage just leave out that it's to be demolished? That's what we're going to do. We want to get rid of the thing. And over time, we can work out what we want to do.
So I'm hoping someone will move the motion as I read on the screen, which is
Well, I'll
moved by
move that
some.
the council resolves.
So you are going to move it. The council resolves in respect to the former CFS shed at lot 343, Princess Imanigi, that it be demolished and the site
That's it.
retained by council,
And the site
And the
retained.
site
by
retained by
Yep,
council,
yep.
full stop.
as is
As not.
been reworded already. Councillor Arthur has moved that way. I'm looking for a seconder, which I'm going to take as you, Councillor O'Hara, I think. You want to speak to it, Councillor Arthur?
I just think I can see the point that councillor Bland's making. Let's not rush into what the decision you're going to make, but we do need to get rid of that. It's been talked about, I think, when you was on here last time, Mick, so that's 6 years ago, 7 years ago. So let's get them done and then get it done, and then we can work out what will be the best option.
Councillor O'Hara, you want to add?
Yeah, I'd just say, if we were using it for anything, we'd rethink that, but we're not using it. It's got asbestos in it evidently, so the whole road is the best thing to do.
Any other councillors wish to add a debate? And I'd note that it says here the demolition costs be incorporated in the 23-24 budget, so people are asking about that. There's no one else, Councillor Arthur, you'll close. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Number 7, surplus assets, train carriages at Tailem Bend.
I have a question, Mayor.
A question, certainly councillor Roundtree.
Are there grants, have the council looked into grants for preserving some of these historical trains?
Through you, Mayor. No, we haven't, but most grants that would be in this realm would be 50-50.
And the other one is, through you, Mayor, if Tailem Bend is sort of leaning towards, we're known as a railway, it's known as a railway town. Is it likely that someone like the State or National Rail Museum would consider even putting, say, more trains out here to bolster that and really build on that? Or is that something that's just not even possible?
So through you, Mayor, we spoke with the manager of the train museum down at Port, thank you, Port. He had no or very little interest in any of the trains from a historical or significant perspective. And I didn't get the sense that he would be rushing to put a train up here.
Councillor O'Hara.
Just a question, I mean, it's probably more to councillor Corman, who probably know more. Is there someone in Tailem Bend, if we decided to keep that caboose, if there's someone in Tailem Bend that is going to do it up, because I look at them today, they're nothing but scrap. All of them, and that caboose is probably the worst one of the lot,
The one that, number 7.
the one that we want to keep. But
One that's an option 2. Councillor Corman, I suppose, do you want to speak or do you want to move or do you want to answer?
Oh, bit of all.
Bit of all.
And then maybe I might move option 2 afterwards, please. Yes, the AV2 van, as an employee sleeping van, as it's known, it's probably needs a bit of work. But having said that, I think the other vehicles require too much work, and there's a transport issue with the bigger ones rather than the little one. That's only a 4-wheeler; all the others are bogies, and of course, most importantly, we're going out for the community is going to be advised of our intent, which is very important. But I think option 2 is more suited because we did have a lot of trouble, as the common thing is at the moment, unfortunately, getting volunteers, and Tailem Rail, as it was known, sort of just fell in a heap in the end because lack of volunteers and people getting too old or passing on, simple as that. And I would think that there is still some qualified railway people around that could easily probably bring that up to scratch, and that could be better preserved by being under the current shelter and the other 6 remaining vehicles be tendered off. And so I'd like to move option 2. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
The Qualman is option 2. There a seconder? Councillor Beach, your You're seconding, you want to speak to it?
I'm seconding. Sorry.
You want to speak to it now?
Mr. Mayor, when going through this information report, I thought option 2 might be more amenable to community views around those carriages. I think option 1 is probably a step too far. Look forward to seeing what number 7 looks like when it's finished.
So yeah, thank you. So I take councillor Peters as second. The point I think in the report is that the wagon, whatever we're talking about here, number 7 could be removed later with the tilt tray. Everything else is probably correct, have to be lifted off. And that particular wagon can go down under the shelter by the old goods shed, correct, in the short term, and we'll let that play out. So it could be just a step by step process. Councillors Roundtree, then Bland.
Thank you, Mayor. Obviously, any sort of repair and maintenance done to this train would have to come up in a future budget. So it's not going to be this year, it's going to be in a future year. What are the risks of that train further degrading between now and when it becomes a priority?
About number 7, are we, councillor?
Number seven. And is there a way that we can do anything to it now to preserve it now so that it's not further degraded when it goes to be fixed up?
Well, councillor, as we might have said, there'll be room in the shelter. There is a shelter there in case.
When the others come out.
When the others come out. That would be the short answer, I think. Councillor Qualman would be a reasonably accurate answer. So at least it'll be out of the weather in the short term. I think it probably allows community to actually provide some focus. At the moment, it's pretty hard to focus on what you want, whereas that will be the only focus if you want it.
Yep.
Councillor Bland.
I think it's all been covered now. Thank you. Questions covered.
Anyone else wish to add to the debate? Councillor Arthur.
Well, question, comment, whatever you like.
Well, it's got to be something really, yeah.
If we go along with this motion and we keep van 7, who's going to fix it?
Well, that's
It's going to be council are going to spend their money to fix it. So, or are the community going to get together and raise the dollars through grants or whatever to get it fixed? And that's, that's the problem as far as I can see with what we're doing here. Do we go around it in a little bit different way and put it out that this is what we intend to do? Sell these off and retain 7 if we got the community interest. Because it's no good us keeping it and then we got no one.
So,
I'm sure.
Councillor, the community is advised of the decision, provided with supporting information, invite the public to comment. So this goes to effectively a form of consultation anyway.
Yes.
So I suppose if there was some massive upswell of get rid of the lot or save the lot, we'd take consideration of it. But at the moment, I suppose council's putting its position. So at the point 3, and a further report is provided. Engagement, consideration. So it's our preferred option. I take on board what you're saying, that we're putting our preferred option. The public will have a say. Councillor O'Hara.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The trouble with that is the local people think that they are on their head. And I put it in there. 10 years time will still be there.
Yeah.
Maybe.
We'll be back here making the decision again. Well, I believe it.
You don't, you may be, because I've been around long enough on the previous agenda item to have 2 looks at it in my career of council too, this CFS shed at Menangi. I understand what you're saying, but I'd say this is going to public consultation at this stage and with the supporting information that we've searched out the last 4 or 5 months. I've got a mover and a seconder. I've got a motion. Does anyone else wish to speak to it? For or against? Councillor
Yes.
Bland, I'm not sure whether you're exclamation mark or.
I understand all signs, but here, but I also think it would be good to hear what the community had to say, even if at the end of the day, we go back to the alternative option, which is all of them, because it won't be cheap to, it becomes a council project to do it up. There are so many of those types of projects across the area. This is a rail town, or has been, and therefore it should have some due consideration. And yes, I have also been through the CFS shed in Menangi issues over many years, and there's a lot of passion that goes with these sorts of projects. So I think we should allow the community to have a say in the first instance.
So the motion allows that at this stage. Well, anyone else? Councillor Law.
Yeah.
Councillor Law, who? Councillor Qualman's the closer.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, I'll close. Thank you.
Mr. Moy, it's moved by councillor Coleman, second by councillor Peach. So there's the motion in front of everyone. It's option 2. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those in favour? Those against? You against that, councillor Arthur?
No, I was for it in the end. You got to,
You sure?
yeah.
It's carried unanimously. That it was option 2. Thank you, councillors. For a fulsome discussion. Number 9, deed of assignment for the hangar lease on the Menangie Aerodrome.
Question.
Yes, councillor Bland. Yep.
Just ensuring that when we talk about a lease on that hangar, we're talking about the ground lease. Because that hangar was privately built. Therefore, they pay rates.
Through you, Mayor, I'll have to ask the director. I don't actually know.
My understanding of the history there is that those 2 hangars side by side there were privately built with a ground lease as against a lease. I'm not sure of the terminology now, so.
My understanding is the opposite. There's actually the hangar that's leased. The actual physical building is leased. That's my understanding.
I would have thought that was with the owner, who may be. I'd just like some clarity around that one. I understood that that was built by previous. The 2 of them were built there. One of them by someone who owned a biplane, and that originally, and that they were all on ground leases, unless we now own the hangars, which we didn't at the time. Ground they were
Oh,
on.
sorry, no, you're correct. You're correct. Because it says here that the gentleman is purchasing the hangar.
From someone else.
But in the first paragraph in discussion, it says that Mr. Flavel is purchasing the hangar from Fly by Day. So yes, it must be a ground lease. My apologies.
So.
You would note, councillors, that it expires with the lease the 30th of June 2026.
And through you, Mayor, the purchaser is aware of that.
Yeah. Might be a ground lease, a right to occupy lease, but it's a lease.
So we don't need to clarify in point 1 that it is a
I
ground lease.
don't think so.
No.
Thank you.
You,
Clarity.
someone want to move that way though? Councillor Coleman, you moving that one?
Yes.
Thank you. Who wants to second it? Councillor O'Hara, thank you. Councillor Coleman, you want to speak to it at all?
No, thank you.
Councillor O'Hara? Anyone else wishes to speak to the recommendation, the 3 dot points there? There is none. Opposing, councillor?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
We're putting the motion as it reads, councillors. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Number 10, request to erect structure on council land, which is from the Menangie RSL. Councillor Bland,
I'll move that way.
you're moving the recommendation. Councillor O'Hara, did I see your hand up in some form?
I'll second
You
it.
second that? Thank you. Councillor Bland, you want to lead?
I've had a long conversation with the RSL around this and the equipment that they're trying to protect and the actual locations. I struggled with the visuals.
Yes.
I read
Yep.
this. And I do think in conjunction with council, they can come up with the final suitable solution to protect the valuable equipment they've had. They were one of the groups that were looking at the old CFS shed to try and protect the memorial memorabilia that is there, such as the gun, the Arrow engine, etc. That now is damaged. It will become damaged, due to weather and salt. So this building is intended to protect that for the future. How it may look in the end is up to discussions with council.
Councillor O'Hara, you want to add?
No, it's pretty straightforward.
Councillor Maidment?
I have a real problem. There's been no public consultation on this.
Worship.
Certainly. Miles?
Because of the timing of the grant applications, etc., it states that there's no no time for public consultation, and I don't think that's very good at all.
Councillor Mayman, I shared those concerns, so, when I put this report together, I certainly wasn't given a lot of time to prepare the report. However, noting that, the deadline for the submission for the funding application, didn't allow us to conduct any engagement, and it really isn't our role to conduct engagement anyway. I drafted the recommendation to give us the ability to ensure that there was mutual agreement on the siting and the reconfiguration on the site. So that gave me some satisfaction, and also note very clearly that the development application is, whilst I can't absolutely say it is subject to public notification, what I would be requiring is that if it isn't public, if it's subject to public notification, that there be significant community engagement by the applicant. And I think that's something we can negotiate. But at this stage, my feeling is that it may very well be declared under the planning legislation either a museum or a store. And that would tend to, yes, because that's the land use. So from a planning viewpoint, it refers to the land use. So it's either storing artifacts or it's storing historical artifacts, which effectively is museum. And hence, I suspect at this stage you'll be subject to public notification, which gives everyone in the community an opportunity to have a say. But if that's not the case, again, I'd be expecting the applicant to conduct appropriate community engagement.
Go on, councillor Maidman.
Another question,
Yeah.
sorry, everybody, through you, Mayor.
Anytime.
The in-principle agreement that we're required to vote on this evening, does that any changes to the potential with the drawings plans that are presented today? So that if they, for example, my question is, if the dome structure becomes unviable and they decide not to do it, and it becomes a gabled structure or just straight flat roof, will the in-principle agreement that we potentially vote on tonight cater for that? Or any other subsequent plans that these drawings they've presented may change? Vote on it and it's going to be an in-principle. Does it have to be those specific drawings?
You deliberately use the words in principle. So in my opinion, that can be withdrawn at any time.
Okay.
It's subject to that mutual agreement, and that mutual agreement would include the design of the structure. At the moment, I think that's unlikely because the application is for funding, and the funding is for a design and a fully costed structure. So it's probably unlikely that they're going to entertain any design changes. And quite honestly, I think the design they come up with, the dome, is fairly simple, and if it's located effectively on the site, I think it should be okay. In fact, it's probably quite a good design. But yes, in principle means you haven't got the absolute green light. You need to pass through a couple of gates, and those can be closed at any stage.
So, sorry, one more on that. Could public consultation be included if needed by the development application as part of an in-principle agreement in the future as well?
The only issue is with that, to your worship, is that we can't enforce that.
Okay.
That, yes, we haven't really got the right to enforce that. And again, that's where we come back to this mutual agreement. I haven't had a chance to talk to RSL about this process, but I would expect that they would be cooperative. And again, the granting body has to be convinced that the project has the agreement of the landowner, which is council. I really don't see. Ultimately, we could withdraw our consent at any stage where we feel it isn't appropriate. We can withhold it if we feel we need further time. through community engagement. And we would make that clear. If this recommendation is approved, we would make this clear in writing to the RSL shortly after the next week.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Peach.
Mr. Mayor, I've just got a question regarding from the contents of the letter from the RSL. Forgive me if I've missed something, but it says that they were interested in transporting these items to the former CFS station and that they were informed that the CFS station would not be made available for any purpose. Just would like to hear a bit more about that.
So you may, I'll start off with that conversation and then the director over there will finish it. But the CFS shed, because of the previous use of it, anything that is considered to be a more sensitive use, which is people actually going into the building, triggers a higher level of compliance. It is part of the reason why at this stage, it's not suitable for use for anything unless we actually do significant refurbishment of it. So the letter there refers to conversations we've had with the RSL president in the past to say that it's not suitable unless council spends some money on it. And so they've ruled that out because at this point, the cost to improve it to a point where it would be suitable is one of the reasons why we don't think CFS shed should be there anymore.
Anyway, so just to add to that, absolutely correct, is that a change of use, and this would involve change of use if it was to become a publicly accessible museum, would trigger requirement for soil contamination testing and evaluation under the EPA requirements. And as I said in my report on the CFS shed, that uncovers a whole lot of unknowns, potentially with PFAS and the like. I've advised a number of people who made queries previously that that would be the case, and that essentially they would be dealing with a lot of unknowns and a lot of unpredictable costs.
Anyone else got questions wish to speak for or against? So the recommendation is as it reads, moved by councillor Bland, seconded by councillor O'Hara. Councillor Bland, you're going to close.
Yes, and in closing, just to say that they have stuck with a Nissan Hut style to support basically through the wall style. It also is a number of Nissan Hut styles, of which we actually own and lease some out in Meningie. Hunter Park was done in that style, and the original Avro engine was done with that style to keep it in some sort of context for as a war memorial. Hence, they're going down that track at this point.
Okay,
I closed.
thank you. Put the motion as it reads. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Number 11, council members' allowance, benefits and support policy review. There is a recommendation, councillors. Councillor Roundtree,
Happy to move it.
you're moving the recommendation as it reads. You're a seconder. Councillor Arthur, you're the seconder. Councillor Roundtree, you want to speak to it?
No, it was all very clear. I didn't have any issues with this one.
Councillor Arthur?
Close. Got to do what
You
the
don't
government
get
tells you.
You don't get to close. Anyone else wish to speak for or against?
I have a question, Mr.
Certainly.
Is it possible to link this document to future revisions of the allowances in such a way that next time council moves it, the update can occur without having to come back to council? Just a procedural question, sorry. Given that it's tied to a very specific.
Through you, Mayor, I'm just checking with the governance officer.
Through the Mayor, I'm not sure if I'm understanding correctly, but if there's any changes to remuneration that then need to be reflected in the policy needs to come back to council.
The question, I suppose, is can the policy say the remuneration as reflected in the current version of something along those lines, given that we have no control over it?
Generally, I would say this is a model policy from the LGA, so all council policies are going to look the same as this, and also you shouldn't have any other remuneration changes until the next election. be reviewed again anyway.
I don't know if I've answered your question, councillor. I think,
I don't think the question's been answered as to whether it's possible, but it's probably a redundant question in hindsight.
So you may, it probably is possible, you would just refer to the legislation that covers this policy.
The question is more, Mr. Mayor, through you, the question is more, given that something was missed and that could happen again, if it was just a reference to policy, a reference to the legislation, then it might be simpler going forward.
I take your point. I think we've simplified the policy over the last few years to the point it is the standard policy. If there was a substantive change, for example, in our band as councillors, you'd bring it back or something like that, but there isn't. It's foreshadowed, I don't think.
Mr. Mayor, this comes up every year after the decision has been made. It's no different, our fees and charges.
Yeah, I think there's an annual
that policy is
CPI.
brought up every 12 months after the change, because they can change everything, your allowances, your travel allowances. So it's a 12-monthly thing, legislative, really.
Agree, Mayor.
To November 22
The
last.
CEO might just read out this bit she's found, please.
So through you, Mayor, councillor Arthur, I think that's already covered now. If you look on page 4 of 16 at the top, council members' allowance are adjusted on the 1st, 2nd and 3rd anniversaries. So I don't think that would trigger a renewed policy, but I think the change in terms of the change in council every 4 years for the term, even if it doesn't trigger a change, I think it's good practice for new councillors to know what's in the policy.
I'm going to move on. Is there anyone else wish to speak for or against it?
Can I-
Otherwise, it stays as the recommendation. Councillor Bland.
I just want to make one, there's probably good clarity for community to know exactly what people are being paid
Yes.
or what allowances people are receiving, because it has in the past caused some concern or misinformation, and it's probably good to see the clarity at least once every 4 years.
Certainly. Anyone else? There being no more, I'm going to put the motion, councillor Roundtree's closing.
Please.
All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Seek the meeting's decision whether they want a 5-minute break or not. Is that a yes or a no? No, no, yes, no.
Yes.
Yes.
There's more yeses than no's, Mick. 5 minutes from 6:10, please.
No.
Yeah,
Yes.
So councillors, we resume at 6:18. Item 11.1, Office of the Chief Executive Officer's Information Report. Recommendation that council receive and note the report. Councillor Roundtree, you moving?
Well, I have some questions.
You're still moving as well?
You're happy to move it? Yes,
Yeah.
but yes, questions.
Let's get a seconder. Councillor Maidment, thank you. Councillor Roundtree's questions.
I'll start with the positive. I think I've had some really good feedback about the Facebook promotion of businesses. Lots of people saying really good things about that, and yeah, very much thanking council for their support. I have some questions on the finances. Now's the right time to ask.
Yes.
Okay. So on the Excel, on the spreadsheet one, dated 24th of Jan, the column as of December 31st has got the wrong date in it. That's just a typo. I understand that that's meant to be 23, 22, 23. But I want to know if it's all rebates, the fact that from November to December is about a $408,000 drop. Is that all rebates paid on rates?
That would be rebates. Through you, Mayor, sorry. Yeah,
That's a lot.
through you, Mayor. There is a long list.
Okay. The next question I had then, going down further, on the, there's a bar chart. There's total income and total expenditure. On the right-hand bar, it says June 22 audited results, 17,694. Then I just want to just clarify. So the column that's to the left of that, is that the 20, is that's the amount we've budgeted to receive an income for this financial year, which is less? Going along further to the left, are they meant to be accumulative numbers?
Yes. Yes, they are, through you, Mayor. So through you, Mayor, at one point, that far left-hand bar will, if expenditure is on track, will equal the right-hand bar in some way. And the difference between the two right-hand bars is, remember that with the audit committee and their internal audits, there was a few adjustments to the final figures for 2022-23.
Right. So, and it's normal then for the income, and I gather this is because of the rebates, for the income to be up and down as it's accumulative, but we don't see that, of course, in the expenditure, which just continues to climb.
Correct.
Yeah.
So through you, Mayor, we will start to refine this over time, because we know that our expenditure is not a flat month by month.
Yeah.
But this is the first reports that we are carving out a synergy, as we get more sophisticated in this, there will be a lot more detail, but this is the top level results.
So for me, generally, I just found those charts a little bit hard to read, and I would like us to really settle on a set of financials and a format that is consistent as we go along, because I actually find it hard to interpret some of this stuff.
We'll take that on board, councillor, because this is there's some standards around how these are presented, but also there's some flexibility. So we'll definitely be not playing with, but trying a few different presentations to see what settles from your perspective is best for you.
Would it help through you, Mayor, for us to come up with what we think we'd like to see, and then you present sort of?
Through you, Mayor, could you give us a chance to just refine it first?
Sure. Thank you. That's all I have at this point.
Anything else? Councillor Peach.
Through you, Mayor, just interested in hearing about the meeting attended with the resident at Salt Creek on the 12th of December.
Meetings attended and your file. Last page 50. Mine.
You beat me, yeah, yeah.
Thank you. I just need a reminder. The director and I went to meet a resident who had written to us on several occasions over the last 12 months. And at the end of the day, we thought it would be more appropriate if we went and met him face to face and talked about what his concerns were. Most of his concerns relate to the highway and DIT issues, but he was very thankful that we went and met with him. There was a couple of things he had a view on in terms of the small settlement where he lives, where things could have been done a little differently. So we've taken them on board. We've reported to DIT the things that he wanted us to report to DIT, and we just continue to work with him. But it certainly was a more beneficial way of doing it than the email chain that we had developed.
If I may, through you, can I pass my congratulations on for undertaking that meeting? I think that's a very positive step. So,
Thank you.
Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm also on the meetings attended by the CEO, and I thank Councillor Peach. He's already asked that question regarding the Salt Creek one. The other one I have, though, in addition to that, is Monteith Community Meeting, Monteith, please.
That's for you, Mayor. So this was between the Christmas and New Year where the flooding was starting to peak. And I know that this is not in our council area, but it's just up the road in a sense from Tailem Bend. So the SES, the community at Monteith wanted to have a sort of a street corner type of meeting because they were starting to get concerned that there may be flooding up to the 1956 levels. So I went along. It was more to hear, I suppose, what their concerns were and how, as it travelled up towards Tailem Bend, whether there were any issues we needed to be cognizant of.
Thank you.
Councillor, if the power line failed across near Monteith, nearly all the way to Tailem along the riverside would have failed at this stage. So, Councillor, and just I might add, councillors, last Wednesday, CRME did host Deputy Premier Susan Close in this room, and one of our principal requests or discussion points was around a facility at Salt Creek still. We're just awaiting sort of the due process of their report to crystallise out now before we really put some effort behind that. Councillor Bland.
So my question is around the Coorong Partnership meeting held on 13. An update.
Sue Mayor, that's a regular meeting that has now settled on being run in Tailem Bend. It used to be in the city. The chair of that committee finds Tailem Bend a lot more suitable, and I'm more than happy to circulate the minutes as they come around.
Is there anything to be fully aware of at this point?
No, not for that meeting.
Any other questions, councillors? Right, we have a mover and a seconder, councillors Roundtree and Maidman. Closing.
Closed.
So I put the recommendation, which council receive and note the report. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. I move on to corporate and community item 2. Report the same process, councillors. Someone move that way, please. Councillor Maidman, thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Arthur, is there any questions that wish to be raised out of that report, please? Councillor Peach.
Mr Mayor, just curious, to 2023 outlook, June 2023 implementation of council's HR manual. What does that actually mean?
Miles. Or the CEO.
Through your worship, essentially your HR manual combines all of the documentation and all of the procedures that relate to human resources. So you've got simple things like study leave forms, RDO forms, human resources policy. It pulls it all together into a manual that says this is how we manage Coorong District Council.
So through you, Mayor, we don't have it in one spot at the moment, and we don't have a sophisticated intranet system that you may be familiar with in bigger organisations. So this was the way of putting all the information that we have that's currently in several locations into the one spot.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. That's good to hear and a bit interesting to hear that we didn't already have it. Could that be provided to councillors once it's been completed, please?
Certainly, the outline and the framework of it is absolutely, that's fine. But a lot of the forms are essentially internal operational forms.
I think, Mr Mayor, through you, that as a matter of governance, if we are looking at it as a holistic package, I think that would be very good for councillors to be able to review particularly if it's incorporating policies that reflect on other areas within the manual.
Through you, Mayor, the HR manual will only refer to internal policies. It wouldn't reference at all external policies of council.
I would still like it noted that I would like to see a copy of that once it is completed.
We'll just take that noted, please. Anyone else in this report, councillors?
Through you, Mayor, does that then need to be noted in the minutes so that it's reflected that this should happen?
Through you, Mayor, we've taken a note of that.
And through you, Mayor, I only just have one, and it was, it's a typo under training undertaken in December 22. And it's the second one down on the code of conduct. It just jumped out at me as a word. It could have been some, what page? I don't know whether that's a template you would then use going forward. When I saw it, I did jump.
Through you, Mayor, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else, councillors?
Yes, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Bland.
In relation to the loss of Louise from planning, just wondering how we're going with, given that it's often an age and people get very frustrated, moved fast.
So through you, Mayor, the advertisement's out there and we are interviewing this week.
Interviewing tomorrow, 2 extremely good candidates, hopeful of an appointment for them.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Being no one else, councillor Mayman, you get to close.
I can close.
Thank you. But the motion, it is as it is. Councillor Receiver, note the report. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. Number 3 will be infrastructure and assets information report, councillors. Someone wish to move that way, please. Councillor Roundtree, are you moving?
I am, and I have a question.
Yeah, can I just get a seconder, please? Councillor Bland, I'm taking. Councillor Roundtree, you're speaking to and your question.
So my question is regard to the bin damage issue. And I note that in terms of total percentage, the numbers are low. However, for those that have had their bins damaged, how are the council assisting residents with the issue?
So through you, Mayor, if the resident tells us that their bin's been damaged, we will take steps to replace it.
Liz, I think that we've taken we are doing a report in this area in the next month or 2, is it right? How am I going?
And through you, Mayor.
So there's some questions around the bins. I would note that the bins are probably the ones originally issued 20 years old now. So I think the report will need to encompass all those issues and who owns the bins and who's responsible for the bins.
Are you able to elaborate further on what actions you are taking to address their issues?
Well, I would wait for the report, councillor. The short term, present policy would be enacted.
Correct. Through you, Mayor, the director.
Through you, Mayor. When someone reports a bin damage, we arrange for them to be replaced as soon as possible. As you know, there's been 14 formal requests for bin replacements. That number may be incorrect because people haven't reported them to council, but we don't know about them. So we have replaced the 14 bins that have been reported.
So my question to follow up on that is that those replaced at fires, they have spoken to our contractor who was going to replace it, had yet not replaced it. Should they have come to you in the first instance? I mean, I've been trying to address issues that keep popping up on Facebook in relation to this to make sure that people are doing it, putting links in, etc. But not everybody's on Facebook. So there is definitely one out there that says they haven't had it replaced because they went to the contractor.
Through you, Mayor, if they're having no joy with the contractor, then they should come to us.
They were happy with
although the contractors responsibility is to address these concerns. I would prefer in these early stages of this contract that council community comes to us. Because there has been concerns, there has been obviously a lot of noise. There's been a lot of noise that has been put out there. We can only address the formal complaints that we receive.
Councillor Peach.
So following on from Councillor Blair's comment, something that I'd picked up on is that some people have said that when they rang council, they were instructed to ring contractor. And that's come.
So
I
through
just
you,
wonder-
Mayor, that would have been the earlier, but we've now got a process in place, correct me if I'm wrong, Director, where we don't do that. We take it and then we'll report it to, if we need to report it to the contractor, we will, otherwise we'll take it on board.
So would, again, through you, Mr. Mayor, would those phone calls where they've been directed to contact the contractor have been reflected in these figures?
Further, councillor Arthur, around
I
this,
just-
around the bins or around something else in the report?
Well, like my comment, I was asked them this morning if we could get 2 more red tops for the bins. The pins broke, well, one of the pins broke last week, and now somewhere in the Tuesday's load, there's 2 red bins from the Foodworks bins because the tops are gone.
And we have them delivered today. Yeah.
Okay.
They won't get delivered till
And
tomorrow.
also there was Phil Manigi said they've got holes in their bins where the actual pins have gone through. So I don't know if they've been reported too. I think the biggest problem is some of these people still really don't know who to get in contact with.
So through you,
Yeah,
Mayor,
well, no,
it's not complicated, councillors. If there's an issue with the bin that is raised with you, get them to ring council.
Councillor, go to councillor Maidment, then councillor Bland.
Okay, thank you. Through you, Mayor, on page 68 of this report, there is a photo of the Taylor Bend Town Hall as their floor being reconditioned, as has Moorlands Hall, timber floor, but it's the Taylor Bend Hall isn't mentioned in that report as to whether it's been reconditioned. That's probably just a typo, but it's not actually mentioned on that page, but there is a photo of it. So I think that needs to reflect that.
Thank you, councillor.
Yeah.
Noted.
Councillor Bland.
I guess this bin issue is one of the issues, but the ability to communicate with community in relation to some of these issues, whether it be bins or something else, is a bit of a problem if it's most of our communication is now done via in some form. And I find that is particularly difficult. Walking down the street works reasonably well, and I know nobody wants to actually know that, hear that, but if we want to do that, putting up a poster in some of the places to have an issue, put it up at the post office or the Foodland or the most prominent places where elderly or those who don't have access go in all of the small communities, and not all of them can get in and ask the question by councillor or at the shop. Those online, try to pick most of them up, down the street we pick them up. But in reality, some of the comments that are being made are probably coming from those who actually don't know the process. And that's how do we make that a simple, large poster run off on our machines.
So through you, Mayor, we could easily, with the next edition of the 3 newsletters across the district, have a small segment in there about what to do. That is quite widely read. And we'll have a look at what other options there are. But at this point, the process is probably no less complicated than it was prior to, with the other service.
Councillor Peach.
Mr. Mayor, a question with regards to the fuel report. I note that 3 of the depots have exactly the same usage figures. Are those figures based on a log of actual usage by staff, or are they based on a refill log? And either way, is there any reason why they're very close to whole numbers?
Through you, Mayor. You'll note that Taylor Bend's a very accurate figure. Our other 3 depots are done. So we are looking at replacing our fuel storage and dispersal system at all of our depots with a Bowser system, which provides a digital readout, which but obviously there's a cost involved in setting those up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Arthur.
Mr Mayor, Director of Infrastructure, and Assets, or whatever it's called now.
To me.
Regarding grading, I believe one grader operator retires today. We made moves to get replaced. And how many graders have we actually got working at the present moment? Because a few fellas have said to me there was one sitting in the depot here, I think, but that's the one with the transmission that's gone, isn't it not? And a couple of them been sitting out in the same corner for a while.
So
I'm just wondering how many are working. And there is a considerable drop of graded kilometres graded last year.
we might just acknowledge Gary Gibbs's retirement. I think it's today or tomorrow, in effect, but he very long serving council employee. So acknowledge his 36 years. Yeah.
Yep.
So we acknowledge that publicly here now. I suppose it's a Christmas period, councillor. Director, you want to add anything to that?
Have replaced our retiring grader operator Gary, and yeah, if I can congratulate him on his service to council. 36 years is an awesome effort. So well done, Gary. Also, we have replaced him internally, so we've provided an opportunity for an internal staff member to take on that patrol grading role, which is a fantastic opportunity. But also a long-serving staff member, been in the organisation for 20 years. That's a guy from Menindee. Can I name him?
No.
Okay.
He has retired.
With regards to our grading hours, we are down in December, which we are every year due to the 10-day break over Christmas, where no grading is occurred. We've also had 2 staff members quite ill, which has reduced the number of grading hours. One of those is in the Canal from Tintinara area, and the other one in the Talon Bend area. So those numbers are down, and obviously we've got Braden in Menindee who's on leave. So the numbers are down in December, which is understandable. We do have 3 other grader operators, 1 in our construction and 2 backups. And one of those backups has been employed as the extra grader operator, and also the other one is also on leave. We've got obviously a significant leave burden on our books, and we're trying to manage that. And this time of the year is the most appropriate time to have those people on leave.
Are we getting on top of it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Second question, plant and fleet repurchase disposal, we've got none here. What stage are we at of replacing the rollers? Have we, gone to the operators and spoken to them and put orders in for them? Because it'll be quite a considerable wait time for the rollers, would there not?
Yeah, we haven't done that yet. We have had an informal discussion with them last year, but due to the people that were on leave, that meeting was booked for early January. Excuse me, once all those operators are back on deck, we will do that. In terms of plant and fleet, you'll recall last year that due to a transmission issue in that grader and the cost of replacement, we have brought forward the purchase of a new grader from 23-24 forward and pushed other plant back. So the grader is a significant piece of our infrastructure that we're going to replace this year, as well as a number of utility vehicles. So the rollers are still absolutely in front of mind.
One other question, just a report on the Rung Road and the overlapping, I'm not an expert, but I spoke to a couple of blokes that work in that, and they just find it's pretty hard that, like we didn't get the, between May and September or whatever it was before the road done and the edges got chopped out again, that we didn't get them filled, and now we've got sort of that drop off. And is that still acceptable? Did we do it ourselves, or did contractors do it?
I'll answer it, councillor. It disappointed us. So actions will be taken to try and stop that happening again. And one of the issues in the last year or two is just the lack of ability to supervise due to the large capital works budgets. And so I'm assured that the directors have taken this on board.
Thank you.
Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Does that cancel out my question with notice? Because that's my question.
No, it doesn't, but
Thank you, because I'm going to ask the same
Yeah.
thing. Thank you. But I have one other thing.
yeah,
while
no,
we're
go
in this.
now.
Thank you. Section 41, Pandaringa, and we have a minute here from the 4th of May 2022. Investigate extra sign to be installed in a car park for Pandaringa toilet with distance to be determined, it says there, and as this May last year, is something wrong? How are we going with that?
Through you, Mayor. It does seem a long time, but we are waiting for some advice about that. I'll come back to you at a session to where it's up to.
For sure, it's getting a bit long in the tooth. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions around this report?
Relation to Narung Road, but I will wait for councillor Cormann's
Thank
motion
you.
discussion.
Country, if we're finished,
Please.
put the motion, the council receive and note the report. All those in favour? Those against, that's carried unanimously. All right, questions with notice, 12.1. 12.1. Councillors, as you be aware, we're having a workshop very soon around this question. There is a considerable answer there at this stage. Councillor, do you want to raise anything else at this stage?
Next question with notice.
So the number 12.1.
Mr Mayor,
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to move that we go into a closed session pursuant to section 90.2 of the Act and information relating to section 90.3 Part D.
Okay. I am going to actually take the motion. Decided. So you're moving to go into conference around 12.1.
I'm moving to go into conference around 12.1 with, and the rationale for doing that is section 90.2 of the Act. The reason under section 90.2 is section 90.3 D.
Okay, so councillor Peter moved to conference around this subject. Is there a seconder? I'm going to take councillor Bland as the seconder. Is there any discussion around this, councillors?
Mr Mayor, if I may add a further follow-up to that motion. It is my understanding, reading the Act, that under the release of documents, section 91, only documents need to come out of confidence, not a conversation.
Yes. So I need to deal with whether we're going into confidence first and foremost. If there's no further discussion around the motion, have we got it up, Ash? How are we going? Just doing that, because there is a bit of words that need to be appropriate here, councillor, around what we're doing. Section D. As long as I'm with the mover and the seconder, as long as it's okay with them.
So commercial information, which could reason subsection I, could reasonably be expected to prejudice the commercial position of the person who supplied the information or confer a commercial advantage on a third party.
As long as you're both happy with that. Okay, councillors, is there any debate around this? Being none, you're aware that we're moving into conference to discuss this subject. All those in favour? Those against, that's carried unanimously. We just do the provisions of going into confidence, please, Ashley. on screen and live. Thank you, everyone. We're out of confidence. We move to the second question on notice. Councillor Peach, it was in relation to fire access tracks. There is a report there. Anything to add or follow up on that?
If I may, through you, Mr. Mayor, I note the final paragraph, and thank you for the response. I may come back later on with something a bit more concrete around it, but I note the final paragraph is discussions with the regional commander of the CFS. If I could just comment / suggest that when those discussions are had, and I might add too from a CFS point of view where we'll be just bringing this further forward, there is currently a new procedure from the CFS regarding the training for the dry firefighting equipment, which mandates that people that are authorised to use that equipment have to conduct certain theoretical and practical training. It might be an opportunity for us to clear up those tracks to a point that they're passable by an emergency service vehicle and provide a training ground for the volunteers to drive that equipment. It's been a bit of a challenge. There's not many areas we can go and knock down deliberately. So if it's
Grant a
possible,
mineral break, councillor.
yeah, if it's possible, it might pay to explore that avenue as a means of fixing the issue at hand and also enabling the CFS to conduct some training.
The councillors,
We'll
what
take that
the
on.
councillors referring to is what we locally would call the skidder.
The skidder.
CFS terms, which is a dry firefighting thing. Councillor Roundtree.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Seeing that the policy is silent regarding who maintains a road reserve for emergency access, would council be in a position to offer incentives to landowners to maintain that section of track if they wanted to, because it would obviously help emergency services get to their properties? Is there any sort of thing that we could offer? Because I think looking at the video was awful and that could have just been a terrible situation.
We went through this policy some time ago. Matt, do you just want to have just a discussion around private, within the policy confines, the private, whatever's, road reserves and trees?
It's a massive, complex issue, because we've probably got more unmade road reserves than made. Most of those aren't fenced. So, for example, a broadacre paddock may have a road reserve running through it, and there's a strip that's 12 metres wide, and who theoretically has responsibility of that? For all intents and purposes, the farmer's cropping it, but if something happened on that, you know, there is a liability issue with regards to doing anything on an unmade road reserve. It's complex and it's a risk. In terms of a road reserve that's vegetated, some are fully vegetated and are unpassable. Some have a two-wheel track that you can get through with on a motorbike or a quad. Others you can get through with a four-wheel drive. Others you could drive through with a truck. No worries. So there's a massive variance of what is maintainable and what's passable and what's not. So it's extremely difficult. And I guess one of the things that the response is about is to work with emergency services, which you know, we do with, you know, I sit on the Zest, I go to the quarterly meetings at the Murray Bridge Police Station, where we have discussions about preparation for fire seasons and whatnot, and having that relationship with the hazard leaders, CFS, SES, gives you an opportunity to discuss things like this and determine where the problem areas are and take action against those. If that requires vegetation clearance, then we go through the process of seeking approval from the native vegetation council to do that. It requires a little bit of upgrade from a infrastructure point of view. For example, if there's a really sandy track, we need to put a bit of material on there to provide access, we can do that. But we can't do it on every road. We've got to pick and choose which ones we do. Otherwise,
It will be coming to you with the budget.
we'll be
So just further to, and has council ever looked at if a fire truck was going out? I'm going to use the example of the video that councillor Peach put forward. If fire went through and damaged that vehicle, the people got hurt. Has council ever looked at who's liable for that injury, or what happens around that situation? Because if they're on a council's unmade track and it's not
I
the
think you
farmer's
answered your own question, councillor.
But it's land owned by council, it's just
So,
unmade.
but we would always be at risk at every point in
Okay.
that scenario. Always. So it would go back to the insurance of the authority running it.
Okay.
Councillor Peach.
Mr Mayor, if I may, the reason I brought these three tracks up particularly, they're in well. 10 years ago, they were passable tracks. I wouldn't have had an issue with taking a fire truck down them. So in my mind, in raising this, we've gone from a position where they were accessible and in some cases serve a very necessary access route to where they're not. But I think if we can partner with the CFS to perhaps solve the issue in a way that is least expense incurred, then that's probably the way forward.
Through you, Mayor, the key thing is passable, but they're not a formal council asset. They're just a road bit where someone has made their way through and it's become a passable track over time by, you know, people
Sneaking through.
driving through it. So it doesn't sit on an asset register as a road, it's an unmade road reserve. But that doesn't preclude the opportunity for us to provide some access and some convenience for emergency services.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, in the instance of one of these roads, it does have a council sign pointing into the unmade area saying it is a road. And in the case of a continuation of a road, which all three of these are, is there a resource available to see where that ends, where the road ends and where it?
Depends on the road. And there's multiple roads like that within our district where the road becomes a pseudo driveway.
Yeah, so what I'm asking though is from council's point of view, is there a register of where our asset ends? How would we access that, Mr. Mayor?
That will no doubt be in the road hierarchy list, I think, at the end of the day, where a road may take 5 forms over its life. I'll give you an example of a road, Riddell Road or Riddle Road, how do we pronounce it, councillor? Riddle, which is not bad on the south end. I think there might be some expenditure this year or last year on it, but progressively turns into something that you'd be a very good four-wheel driver to get through. One of the issues with the modern methods of directing people is that they think looks like a road to them. Now, this issue has come up through Maryland's Riverland as well around motorbikes, not so much in our area, but some using road reserves. And if they're a registered motorbike and behaves with law, they're allowed to use the full reserve. There's issues of collisions with farm gates and obviously destruction or whatever of native vegetation. So it's a very complicated space. I think we start in this scenario you asked the question in around, does our road hierarchy phase down into a 5C, a D or E in that? That would be the starting point. But I think you're taking on the training opportunity is probably the most interesting option. And we haven't probably discussed yet the native vegetation branch's position. So I don't know if we've answered your question, councillor, but you've raised an interesting.
Mr. Mayor, I think we're on the pathway to finding an answer.
So at some stage in the next 6-12 months, we might have a workshop on road hierarchy and got one coming up which might partially explain the process.
Native beach.
Just one thing at a time, councillor.
Well, that's up.
I'm going to take it, councillor, we've dealt with that one and we move on to councillor Qualman's one in relation to the Narung Road edge sealing. Made a couple of statements thus far, councillor, or is that somewhat happy? You will note that it's basically due to the wet weather, but are we happy? No.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to now talk about my question. The reason I wrote a question and notice is that I've received various complaints from ratepayers about the condition or how the job was done on this new edging from Warringah Road up past the 7 Mile on the Rung Road. I actually went out and visited myself. I'm no road engineer, but I could see it's of a very substandard. And it's either that the base had failed or whatever. I'm not an engineer, like I said, but I have concerns about the excessive drop-off. It's over an inch, 2 inches drop-off. The original sill edge is quite haggard. And in places, unfortunately, everybody, and this is only a month old, it's actually breaking up. So what is the plan that we're going to rectify this, please?
So, Matt, do you want to sort of give a broad response to this issue?
Through you, Mayor.
Or you want me to?
I'm not happy about it, you know. if money was an issue, it'd be ripped up already. Started. Acceptable. It's the preparation was done till date due to the weather. Some remedial work was done on the 8th and 9th of December, preparation for a 19th of December seal. That work was, from what I've been, through the quality checks was reasonable. The seal was delayed to the 19th of December. Obviously, it should not have been sealed.
So through you, Mary.
I can't say much.
It also
Would.
points to your comment, Mayor, that in terms of projects and the amount of work on the books and the actual quality of work as it progresses through the system, something gives, and generally it's that monitoring of the work as it progresses through the system. Now, whether we had a choice about when it was sealed and when the work was done, and could we have picked a better date? Probably the answer is no, but it probably is the monitoring of the process more than anything else. And were we happy with the results? No.
Councillor, I'll go to Councillor O'Hara first.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. I went out there and had a real good close look at it after Brendan rang me, or Councillor Corwin rang me. Went out and had a good look. Not as bad as everyone's saying. I mean, they put an edge about that wide on to start with, and then they put another one on, but they didn't do it all the way. They only did it half the way. Is the problem. It looks ugly, I admit, but I only found one spot where it was breaking through, and that was in the original that they did. And you've got to remember, we are now allowing AB doubles out there, grossing about 100 tonne, doing 100 kilometres an hour. And that back trailer drops off that bitumen, she rips a fair hole and she comes back on, I can tell you. And I support transport, I've been in it for 40 years. But it's easy to see what's causing the damage. And personally, and I owned a transport company, as I said, for 40 years. I believe when we do something like that, when we allow them trucks out there, we should be putting a speed limit on it.
Come back to that in a second, Councillor. Councillor Bland.
Well, firstly, I'll support the speed limit out there because certainly avoided in the past. And we do have some heavy trucks going over that road, particularly around harvest time. However, having said that, it is disappointing. And I think that we have spent, and my question to Matt, sorry, to the Director. Thank you, is what did it cost? And I imagine that we'll have repairs to be done. And what are the potential costs, or should we be looking at sections of it now that need sorting? And I also went and had a look, Councillor O'Hara's and Councillor Corman's right. There is one area that is breaking, and whether or not we should be repairing some of that earlier than later. Unfortunately, there's a budget issue here.
We will take those.
We haven't got a cost at this stage. Can I just take up the subject of heavy vehicles and roads while we're here? And I've been approached by this harvest. I've been my own truck driver. I'd like to think through the process of local government, we might look at a study. We'll discuss this with the Director. We come in for some criticism in a different report in late December as well about one of our roads. I'd like to think we take up pushing for a study around the damage or the use of multiple axle vehicles at speed, because the question remains from very experienced truck operators is it the fact there's multiple axles, or is it the speed? And I know, as I've been trialling it myself on my own, and I don't live a lot of main highways, but travelling at a reduced my productivity, because I know what happens when you have to repair the truck. But having the access for the larger vehicle is very important to the productivity. If you observe, this harvest has been taken into Tailem Bend, mostly by Viterra Tailem Bend, had a record grower receival of over 500,000 tonnes. And it's been done with only one sampling hut, which is just, and that is mostly, in my view, A, reflective on the excellent work of the staff there, but B, just the truck size. You sample the same amount of grain for 70 tonne or 55 tonne or 43 tonne as you do for 8. And so the site has done an excellent job. So probably it's a discussion perhaps in a first roads and infrastructure meeting around us pushing for a study on, and Matt says there may be some around what I call white rubble roads. I've seen plenty of studies on gravel or buckshot roads in my time, but not perhaps on a road product or road surface we use extensively here in South Australia. I don't know if that's finished your answer to your question, councillor. Councillor Peach is going to have something to say, but at the end of the day, we know, yeah, we're aware of your issue.
Can I just say one more thing? Then again, you compare it with the shoulder work we did on Coldy Road about 2 years ago. There's no comparison, and that gets a hammer in by heavy vehicles. So that's probably a good thing to know. Thank you.
Councillor Peach.
Mr Mayor, through you, if when we enter contracts with these contractors to do this work, is there a recourse clause in the contracts? I'm happy if this is not, but is there a recourse clause ensuring relating to work that's not completed?
The director will discuss this.
Yeah, through you, Mayor, absolutely there is. We hold security for defects and a retention. So we have a defects liability period for all works. The issue in this situation is that the pavement works were done in May, and we were unable to seal it, so that pavement was then exposed, and that voided the defects liability period. And then we engaged the sealing contractor directly to do the sealing.
We're a victim of the wet spring and timing, councillors. What I would say in that broader sense around our works programs is we need to be planning years ahead. I mean years ahead on almost every project we think, because there's lots of other approvals that slow up the process. And I'm probably referring to Coorong 7 Mile project, which I've driven and it's a pretty good result, but nonetheless was delayed to weather, delayed to other things many times. Councillor Qualman, I think we've had a fulsome discussion around this. And move on.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
No worries. To Councillor Growntree's question on with notice. SCOSA.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and thank you for the response. In the response, you say that council supported the LGA's position on the scheme. What isn't clear though is what their position was or is.
Through you, Mayor, the LGA pushed back significantly, like I've said there, around the key issues around cost, and weren't a fan of the actual implementation that went ahead anyway.
But to that then, what is going to be planned for further pushback, or are we just going to accept it?
So the first tranche of councils is currently occurring, and I know that's the genesis of your question. I expect that this will be a topic of conversation for a little while yet. Where it lands, I really don't know. It probably is dependent on how strong the state is in having the oversight of councils across South Australia. But certainly there is not a willingness across councils that this is the best way to go. Generally, it's accepted that it's an expensive impost for something that we already know in terms of information, and we don't see it adding value to the process.
While the LGA weren't in favour of this, it was the best or the worst of a bad lot in terms of the parliamentary process of negotiation.
Just on that though, if the LGA aren't supportive of this and most of the councils are, then what recourse we have to ever combat government on anything? Is that, does that? No, not really, because I mean, there has to be a way to unravel a bad. Don't just accept a bad decision. You have to be
bad decisions.
Well, but just imagine hypothetically they did. There has to be a way to push back on that. Like I just find this astonishing that we just go, oh well.
So, councillor, we could probably future discuss writing a letter to the LGA or the different groups within that. But I'm sorry.
Someone's going to have to take the lead.
To you, Mayor, I expect it will be an agenda item on SAROG, GAROG, and I think the LGA at the end of the year when mayors come together, I would be very surprised if it's not a topic of debate.
And we should consider ourselves lucky we're not in the first tranche here.
Absolutely.
Because we know what happened when we were in the early tranches of the planning changes, don't we? Councillor Peach.
Mr Mayor, through you, I note that some councils have been publicly pushing back against this. Do we have the appetite to do that as well? And or directly lobby the responsible minister with the change of government. So that to ensure that our views are well known, at least to the minister.
So through you, Mayor, that would be a perfectly reasonable thing to do. My suggestion is that we could wait a month or two to see where the current lobbying lands, to see what the appetite is across the state. We'll soon get a sense about whether there's an appetite for any changes or whether the state government is happy to live through the noise.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll consider that completed. Questions without notice, councillors, try me. Councillor O'Hara.
I've got one for the Director of Infrastructure.
Through me, always through me, through me,
And he's,
through me.
Just say-
oh, through you, yeah, of course.
I get the call, believe it or not.
A couple of months ago, I was out your Maley Road and you're doing some work there on 3 or 4 kilometres, the other side of
Gordon
Gordon
Road.
Road. Yeah, now one of the lads there, I don't know if you're supposed to or not, but he told me you were putting something in the rubble as a trial. What was that and how's it going?
So, through you, Mayor, we did a 3 kilometre section and used a different methodology for each 1 kilometre section. There was a polymer material that we are trialling. It increases the plasticity and enables us to use lesser quality rubble to try and achieve the longevity, which will help us in particular in that sort of southwestern part of our district where we're struggling to get rubble. So the 3 methods were fresh material with the polymer material, existing material with polymer, and then a conventional resheet. So we're trialing to see how that's performing. And we'll leave it 12 months and then determine whether that is something that we can start to use the resheets through our region to try and increase the longevity of our actual pavements.
Because I was out there the other day and it's pretty good. Those 3 kilometres is pretty good.
Adds a couple of dollars per the process, but if we can get 25, 30 years out of a resheet rather than 15 to 20, then it pays for itself.
It's got longevity, yeah.
Councillor, yeah, and in discussions with the director, in the changing of the angle of the road, what's the right word, Matt? The transect or something. Canberra, where a crossfall's changed, there has been, this last spring has really flushed out some problems, as you know. And so anything that can help us hold together the rubble in those parts of the road is worth a trial, if nothing else.
Certainly.
I'm in questions without notice, councillors, so Councillor Qualman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As we're well aware, on Thursday we have our Australia Day celebrations, ceremonies, we want to call it. Just a question through the chair to the CEO. What happens if, say, at Tarlan Bend, which is done by the Progress Association, one of the Progress Association can't do it or goes defunct, does council then come on board and then run the event in the case of we can't get no community body?
Through you, Mayor, I think the Australia Day events are important across the district, and I know that various associations have picked that up. I can see a time where that may not be possible, and I would expect that as a council, we would pick up that work. We do the lion's share of the legwork anyway, so it would be a matter of probably doing it all. If council wanted to have a report about that, if, say, the Progress Association here decided they couldn't do it anymore, and that's likely, then we would take it over, unless council had a different position.
As you know, Councillor, as you know, the policy is that the nominator of the award has a reasonable influence on this process and I feel that it's the best way of doing it because we're getting the community involved directly rather than let alone the difficulty. And I will say this about us managing multiple sites. We're one of the few councils that does it in the community where the person's from. And I look forward to each and every one of you coming to as many of them, 3 on Thursday and 1 on Saturday at Menangi. Yeah. Early at Tintinara on Thursday, here around lunchtime, and I'm at Sherlock if you want to come at 6 p.m. And since I've got you on the subject, I will be little certificates for the Mayor's Award will also be handed out on those three
Yeah.
groupings.
That's right.
Go on, sorry.
And one more question through the chair to the Director of
Yep.
Roads and Infrastructure, please. Eagerly awaiting the ceiling on Waddle Street. How are we going, please?
Through you, Mayor, construction's out to tender, so the design's complete, hopefully, I think it closes next week.
Right.
Our capital works manager's got that under control, but, yeah, definitely, on the books to get done, this financial year
Okay, thank you.
with curb and footpath.
Good. Thank you.
Councillor Bland and Councillor Arthur, I think I was on.
Just a question really, through you, Mr. Mayor, and that is in relation to all staff, and given that it's been the Christmas period, but things do look a little bit untidy around the towns. I'm just wondering if all town maintenance staff are back on there.
Through you, Mayor, it's progressive. So on one hand, we're encouraging staff to take leave because of leave balances in some cases are beyond what's acceptable and staff really do need a rest. So it is still progressive. There are still some staff on leave.
Probably councillor, just need to talk about whether we think the town's untidy, not the staff. I don't. So I'm going to challenge you. I don't think our towns are untidy.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
I don't think our towns are untidy, councillor. So when we talk staff, we talk about whether you feel our towns are really that tidy. But I'd challenge you on that. I think actually our towns have looked as best they ever have, given the wet late spring.
Yes, they're lovely and green in certain spaces, which also puts extra onto
Yeah.
our staff, but there is certainly a reasonable amount of rubbish blowing around. Normally that would have been sorted and picked up. So my question still is, when are staff back on deck so that things are looked after? Otherwise, you know, it's really shouldn't be the job of volunteers to pick up that amount of rubbish and stuff laying around. But also the weed management, which is discouraged for volunteers to do around spraying, and that is some of that stuff that happens. And while we may have had a wet spring, some of this stuff's been like it for a little while now. I'm not going to be specific about it, but I would also challenge you back and saying that we do have some beautiful towns, but some of it relies on volunteers to make it that way.
Certainly.
But at the moment, we've freed up staff from, to be fair, toilet cleaning, etc., and we haven't had any issues to my knowledge. However, that we should see an improvement in time, and we have massive areas to look after, I accept.
Okay, now I think councillor Arthur was next.
Yep, through you, Mr. Mayor, just like to ask on behalf of the youth of Tidanara, what is the situation regarding? Have we done tests now? Have we
Just-
identified the youth?
I'll give you a question exactly there and let the CEO answer it.
Through you, Mayor, we're waiting for the first set of tests where they've used a test that is suited for the salinity of the water, and they will also give us a view about whether they think the E. coli and the contamination is a result of bird, animal or human. And so bird, animal, yep, so those three. So we thought we may have had the results this morning, but we haven't got them yet.
So it's a very, very close to knowing.
Through you, Mayor, one of the things we found over Christmas was that not all businesses are open, as there's shutdowns as well in this particular industry. But we thought we would have it back this morning, and unless we've got it back as we're sitting here, we haven't got it back yet.
Councillor O'Hara.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I guess it's to the Director of Infrastructure again. I've been approached by a group of people who live on, well, not so much live on, but farm on Feebig Road. Right now, they're inquiring as to whether the council would be prepared to take over the continuation of Feebig Road, or whether they'd be able to grade it or something. Now, I've told my personal opinion is private road, and
So we would need you to have a discussion with the director, I think, and define the areas of interest and therefore go forward from there. Probably talking in a broader sense in the meeting probably doesn't give us the result we really want.
I guess my question is it worth them? Is it worth me going back to them and saying,
It's worth
put in
it.
a petition and come in here and
No, I think,
tell us your story? or-
as with almost everything, asking our CEO or our directors through our CEO to go and visit the site will show exactly what the possibilities are. And as councillors, as you're aware, we're doing a roads tour, a very big day in late February. Never know, but I think I know the section of road you're talking about, but it needs to be defined far better than a conversation we're going to have here at 7:37. But yeah, I think that's the path to take. Councillor Bland.
Mr. Mayor, firstly, I'd like to say it's good to see that the skate park started pretty much on time and it's moving. There's a lot of excitement. My question is, who's monitoring the progress on a regular basis down there? And its location?
Yours, really.
Do I repeat the question? I was talking, how did you spell that road that councillor O'Hara just mentioned? Thank you.
This is about skate park, who's monitoring the process.
Thank you.
Okay, but it started exactly on time. Exactly on time.
Excellent.
And all of the pre-pour inspections and reinforcement checks for the concrete quality are being undertaken by our project management staff. So there is a QA checklist and hold points to make sure that all quality assurance is met. And so they were down there, they've been down there this week, but they did their last pre-pour check last Friday afternoon.
Thank you.
There we go. We're nearly common questions without notice. If there is no more, I'm going to move to motions with notice, of which I have none. So I move to motions without notice. Councillors. Councillor Roundtree.
Thank you, Mayor. After the conversations that we've had around the removal of background information from questions or motions with notice, I would like to move that the relevant background be allowed in future questions, motions placed in the agenda if the author feels the extra information will help their fellow elected members or staff make an informed decision on a matter.
Councillor, what I'm going to say to you is that I'll need you to formalise that for the next monthly meeting as a motion on notice.
Okay.
A motion with notice.
Can I ask you why? Like, why?
Because I think that it's important that we receive the relevant information around governance of this subject to inform this debate.
Okay.
Are there any other motions without notice? There isn't. I'll move on. Minute action list, councillors. There's a minute action list there. Is there questions? Councillor Bland.
Just in relation to the footpath strategy, and given that we're a new council, I'm just wondering whether as a part of the process and briefings, we could have that brought up to date as to how that evolved.
We can do that.
Certainly other things out of the, not the footpath strategy, the minute action list. There's nothing else. I have nil in confidential. So I move to the closure. Just councillors, once again, just reiterate the importance of Australia Day. 3 of our communities celebrate on Thursday and Menengi on Saturday. So I'd encourage everyone to attend them.
And I accept my apologies to Sherlock
Certainly.
and Tintinara. I will have a young child in tow and it's just too much.
So my governance officer said something, so I need to listen to what she said.
Right.
Could you please provide your RSVPs to staff around those events?
Around those events, please.
Just on that matter, is accepting the invitation on Outlook enough? Yep, okay.
Okay. Being 7:41, if there's no further business, and I'm pretty sure there's none, Ashley, we're done. I declare the meeting closed. Our next workshop is next week, councillors. Thank you very much.
See.
You're going to ask me.
Yeah, next.
Going to ask.